Hello, my name is Ghostbones, and yes, the ghost is in fact in love with the bones. The Tasmanian Tiger was a weirdly big part of my childhood. My exposure to the series was entirely accidental, in all honesty. At the time, I'd recently just gotten a PS2 for Christmas after much pleading and excellent academic performance. I honestly don't remember the occasion, but one day my mom came home with a game semi out of the blue, and it was a game I'd never heard of. I was skeptical, to say the least. My mom has never really engaged with games, and my 9 or 10-year-old self was concerned. Instead, my mom had unknowingly introduced me to a wonderful series of 3D collectathon-platformers that would largely consume a lot of my youth's very limited and precious gaming time. Of the 3 original Thai games, I had the least overwhelming experience with the first. I remember being fond of it and talking about it, but wasn't crazy about its structure. Until these HD re-releases, I had the most loving memories of 2, followed by 3, and then the original. That said, it didn't stop me from being overwhelmingly excited when I found out about Chrome returning to the series. It was a profoundly weird experience, actually. Ty had come up talking about childhood games with a friend, and after gushing about it and ending the call, I ended up looking up the game to go down memory lane, only to see the first teaser released for the HD remaster. But now the game is out, and after 100% completing the finished 1.0 version of the HD remake, I have to say it actually might be my favorite of the series now. That said, I don't want to get ahead of myself, so let's break down my opinions in, a smart way. With words. In the structure that I've established. Go! Story isn't really a critically important part of the Tasmanian Tiger. It more resembles a Saturday morning cartoon than a classic literary work. If it wasn't for the cartoony anthropomorphic animals, then I guess it must be the giant robots and wonderfully hyperbolic Australian tone. The game opens with a cutscene of Ty playing around before stumbling across a spiritual figure who explains his family's backstory and introduces the main conflict of the game. Years ago, the evil boss Cass, a cassowary, collects and uses a series of 5 talismans to trap almost all of the world's mammals in a pocket universe. However, right before he's trapped, Ty's father knocks the talismans off and they're lost across the world. And by the world I mean just Australia. Unless the world is just Australia in this universe. This is a rabbit hole. I'll save that for another video. Anyways, with the help of his friends, Ty begins seeking out these talismans to get them before Cass can, but to do so, he needs to collect Thunder Eggs to power a portal machine, the convenient plot element that introduces the main collectible and level structure of the game. The game is light on overall plot, with only occasional cutscenes, mainly at the end of boss fights. Most of the story is smaller struggles and conflicts within the level, like a teacher missing her students in an avalanche, or helping Ty's girlfriend get her car started back up. Of course, even beyond that, there are sometimes even smaller objectives that could be considered side quests in each level that might reward items. The story is silly and simple, but fun. And considering the game is aimed at younger audiences, I'd say it does its job. It has some humor, you feel compelled by the objectives it gives, and even has somewhat of a twist, as somewhat predictable and cliche as it may be. It's an engaging framework that doesn't try to be anything it's not without lazing about. Narrative and tone scores an 8. While the story acts as a broad motivation, the core driving force of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is its gameplay. The gameplay is divided into 3, or technically 4 groups of discrete levels, each with their own settings, stories, and set of collectibles. Collectibles are definitely worth talking about, as collecting them is both critical to advancing through the game and obtaining new tools. There are a number of things to collect: opals, thunder eggs, bilbies, cogs, and paintings. Opals are the most frequent kind, acting as rings or coins might in other games, and they also serve as sort of a loose guide to a level's critical path. Exploring the levels thoroughly and completing optional mini-quests and objectives will yield the others. Despite how daunting collecting everything may seem, the HD remaster has added a completion screen for each level to let the player know what collectibles they're missing, and it's honestly a huge improvement. None of the items feel unfair or impossible to find. At worst, they just seem to push the player to really explore the levels fully. The levels themselves are a joy and offer complexity without losing the essence or linearity of the game. Each level has its own self-contained story that drives the player along a critical path, but there's also a great deal of secrets and side quests along the way. Levels are stretched out enough to give it a sense of exploration and adventure without being watered down and contentless. Every area has purpose, and honestly, I have to say it's a masterpiece of level design. The moment-to-moment gameplay is solid but simple, Ty having a number of tools at his disposal to navigate levels. Of course he can run and jump like any decent platformer, but he can also glide with the use of his boomerangs and chain bite attacks to move upwards. Physics be damned. The only criticism I have of the movement system would be that small careful movements are near impossible where required, though it's admittedly pretty rare. For combat and interaction, Ty's main tools are his boomerangs, which can be thrown in an arc in front of him, and an individual rang can't be rethrown until it returns to his hand. Bites can also be used to break boxes or attack enemies, but are largely useless outside of a few puzzles. The combat is very basic, but it never really feels like the core of the game, and with the array of types of boomerangs that you can obtain, it still feels somewhat satisfying. Between masterful level design and tight controls, Ty earns a 10 out of 10 for gameplay. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger HD is a remaster of a PS2 era game, and so there's only so much one can expect of it visually. With that said, Chrome has done a frankly pretty damn good job of modernizing and making the game look good. Between texture replacements, revamped lighting, and redone water textures, the game still looks a little dated, but it never looks bad. While initially this gave me pause, it's important to remember that the game is a remaster and not a full remake. Though, Chrome, if you needed ideas, there you go. Character designs are fun and colorful, and each perfectly captures the essence of the characters and references their real-life animal bases. From the ever-so-cowardly and scrawny Dennis the Green Tree Frog, to Sly, the edgy and quote-unquote cool Tasmanian Tiger, each character has a strong visual identity to the point that I can name a lot of the main cast of the games just from a picture. Levels are honestly gorgeous, each with a strong sense of location and aesthetics. The central hub area, Rainbow Cliffs, is a striking lake amidst red stony cliffs. There are rich billabongs, beautiful sun-soaked beaches, snowy mountain peaks, and arid, sand-blasted deserts that would make Mad Max feel at home. Of particular note is the starry nighttime lake area of Bridge on the River Ty and the forest fire-scorched snowy forests of Beyond the Black Stump. If you go into Ty expecting photorealism Hyper HD graphics, I don't know what to tell you. But if you go in with the understanding that it's a remaster and not a totally new game, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much work and love the Chrome of the past and present have put into making an aesthetically cohesive and fun to look at game. 10 out of 10. With audio, there's a lot of good stuff here to talk about. One of the core presentation factors of this whole game is it being set in Australia, from its natural settings to its local wildlife, and of course, its accents and slang. And of course, as it's an already very cartoony game, these are pushed to the max in the voice acting, which is rife with "G'days" and "Rippas." All of the voice actors do a phenomenal job with the material provided, and with the game being fairly light with dialogue, a poor performance would stand out. Off the top of my head, a few highlights include Ty's cheerful Aussie tones, voiced by Stig Wymus, Lenny the Lyrebird's hack insurance salesman Lies, voiced by Terrence McGovern, and of course the downright diabolical schemings of the Wicked Boss cast, voiced by Clement von Frankenstein. As I said though, everyone on the cast does a phenomenal job and contribute excellent work to help the game work. The sound effects in the game are serviceable but largely forgettable. That said, they are distinct and clear in the direction they're coming from. Most boomerangs have their own slightly altered throwing sound, and admittedly I'm a sucker for how the sound moves at the boomerang arcs. It's a simple trick, but one that proves effective. The only sound that really bothers me is the bite. The sound of teeth clashing together is just kind of unpleasant, but admittedly accurate in that case. The music for the game was done by George Stamatiadis, and as with seemingly every other element, meshes perfectly with everything else. Each level song suits the visual style and atmosphere, and at a certain point, the song and level blend into one another beautifully. Of particular note is the relaxed acoustics of the Midnight Trek of Bridge on the River Ty, or the feeling of exploring the ancient wilds of an Australian rainforest found in Walk in the Park. Honestly, there's only so much I can do to describe the soundtrack, as it really needs to be heard to understand the kind of moods and settings it evokes. While none of the tracks are bangers or really the kind I'd personally listen to outside of the game, I don't think that's what they're meant to be, and they serve as a beautiful accompaniment. Audio gets a 9 out of 10. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is both a wonderful reminder of the past and a modern delight. In playing it and following the development, you can still feel the love the team has for the game, and I have little doubt it's been a nostalgia trip for both fans and creators. It's a game that's as strong in its parts as it is in unison, and it's an experience I'd recommend to almost anyone. I tweeted something about it when I first beat the game, but playing Ty kind of reminded me why I've come to love games. The industry is a very harsh place full of cruel business practices, shoddy releases, and terrible people harassing creators and fans alike. But amidst all that, one team brought out a modest little 3D platformer that doesn't claim to be anything other than straightforward and fun. And they poured so much great work into making it feel modern in all the best ways without sacrificing its identity. I won't pretend to know the internal culture at Chrome, but if it's anything like how their games make me feel like it is, please keep up the great work. At the time of writing, which has admittedly been a lot longer than I'd like to pretend it is, Ty 1 and 2 are now fully completed and 3 is out in full. I fully intend to do reviews of all of them and maybe play them on the channel down the road, but I honestly plan on playing through 3 like I did 1 and 2 first. 100% on my own, first just to let myself revel, think, and remember being a kid sitting in front of a TV in awe. Thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. It's been an embarrassingly long time coming due to a bunch of personal life chaos, but I finally have it to somewhere I'm happy putting it out. I put a lot of effort and heart into this video, so a like, subscribe, or share would mean a lot if you liked the video. Before I go, I just want to say 2 things. Thank you, Chrome, and curse you, Chrome! It wasn't until I replayed the game and got to the Crikey boss that I realized it was largely the source or awakening of my thalassophobia. Like, I had a real visceral reaction as a kid, and having to dive into the water, I still remember how tense I got. Anxiety. Ugh, one of my biggest fears. Thanks for that, guys. That said, I think you guys have more than made up for it, and I can't wait to see what you do over the next few years. But as always, love your bones, be nice to your ghost.